Get this meeting started. Legislative and Human Resources Committee meeting for Tuesday, August 14th. We have a large agenda today, so let's begin with public comment, item 1. Any public comment today? Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 2, approval of the minutes from July 10th. Moved by Commissioner Vonk. Support by Commissioner Korndike. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. Approval of the minutes passed. Item 3, medical examiner performance measurements, 5-minute update. All right, there we go.
Just in time.
Just in time. Moving quickly today.
Okay, I'm Stephen Cole, the medical examiner, and I made it this time. So the mission of the health department is to investigate sudden and unexpected deaths, many of which are violent, and of course the last couple of years a huge number, by far our biggest number of accidental deaths has been the opioid deaths. We do work out of the health department, although we're officially not part of the health department, but basically in a way that makes sense because our mission is basically public health. Let's see, just to get to our performance measures here, and then I've got time at least for questions and answers if there are any. I hope I have the answers. What we try to do, objective-wise, well, the way it works, I guess it may make sense if I give a little explanation of how things work. So when a death is reported to us, it's usually by the police or a hospital, depends on where the person's pronounced dead. And then whoever's in charge of the body will call our office for an investigator, and one of our 7 investigators will take the call and gather the information about what happened to the individual. They will relay it to either me or Dr. Start, who's the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner. We take turns being on call. We will then make a determination as to, first of all, whether there's going to be an autopsy or not. Occasionally, what we will do, and this does affect our budget, sometimes there are cases where we just need more information. We can't release the body because there might need to be an autopsy, but we don't have enough information to know for sure. So an intermediate action that we can take is to have the individual sent into our facility. We can do an inspection. Sometimes there's a question of an injury. We can examine them at least externally, and if we decide an autopsy is needed, we do that. Otherwise, if an autopsy is not needed, then the body will be released and we will sign a death certificate. And again, sometimes we just release bodies directly from the scene, and this might be if we have an elderly person who's in a nursing home who maybe fell and had a broken leg or hip and just didn't recover well and went ahead and died. That's a traumatic death. That has to be reported to us. But those are cases that don't usually need any further investigation on our part. So we'll either basically do an autopsy or not, and then either way, we will sign the death certificate. So the reason I'm saying all that is because one of our performance measures is that when our investigators take a case, when they accept a case for investigation with or without autopsy, they have to make a report. Although it's actually, I think it's now 9 pages, a lot of it's check boxes. And so it's not like they're writing a full 9-page term paper. But it does have, included in that is a narrative of what happened and what the determination was as to the final death investigation. And we want to have those completed with, at least 98% of those completed within 2 months of us taking the case. The reason it can take quite a while is because part of our issue is many of our cases are extremely complex because of, primarily because of Spectrum with the Level 1 Trauma Center that it is. We get cases sent in from all over western and northern and southern Michigan, and if they die here, even though they may have been injured, say in Muskegon or some other county, if the county where the person dies is the one that has to pay for the investigation and do whatever is going to be done. So therefore, we'll get somebody in. We had a couple of tragic cases last week. One was a 10-year-old boy walking with his mother, a bicycle up a hill. Somebody rams him from behind. This is up, I've forgotten exactly. It was in northern Michigan, though. And the child got sent down by helicopter, and this is in the middle of the night. So our investigator gets called, and then they have to go back, try to track down people in the hospital who treated this person, to contact people in the hospital who treated the person, get their information, go back to the police. If it's a small agency, whoever investigated the death at night isn't going to be available till the next night, so they may have to wait till then. The report may not be written, the accident report, for several days. So these investigations can just drag on, and they're extremely time-consuming. So we try to complete almost all of them within 2 months. So, having said that, we achieved, let's see, last year we were right at 98% for 2017, and of course our expectations are really, our goal is 100%, but our minimum expectation is 98%, and we did do that. So, the next thing, autopsy completion. Once we do an autopsy, our goal is to complete basically all of our autopsies within 3 months of the time of death. Sometimes this is not a problem, sometimes it's a big problem. The biggest problems are those where we do our initial procedure, which is an autopsy and a drug screen, and we don't find anything. You might think that's strange, but particularly in young people, I'd say about 3–4% of our people 15 to 30 years of age that appear just to be a natural death, we don't find anything. It may be a strange drug that's not identified on our drug screen, and another challenge for us is that new drugs, synthetic drugs, are coming up all the time, a lot of them manufactured in China. And so it's a big challenge to try to identify them, and sometimes we just can't. Another issue, and I won't dwell on this any longer, but just to explain another type of case, is there are certain kinds of cardiac rhythm disturbances that can be fatal, that are brought about by inherited mutations in the DNA. These hearts can be anatomically normal. The drug screens are normal. So this is kind of a new thing on the horizon, is that we, in such cases, will try to send a blood sample from the patient out to a specialty laboratory who does DNA work, and that takes them a couple of months sometimes just to do that. And then I will say this technology is in its infancy, and I would say still less than half of all deaths come up with an identifiable answer that will explain the death. But we try to do everything we can. So anyway, all the things like that can take quite a bit of time. So we were, in 2015, we had a number of issues. One of them was my partner was injured for a while, and we fell behind, but we're 95% the last 2 years. So though we'd like to complete 100%, our minimum goal is 95% within 3 months, and we've been right on that the last couple of years, including last year. Another performance measure is if we go to a scene. So our investigators, we have guidelines for them as to when they have to go to a scene or when they can take a call on the phone. There's no way with all the scenes. Last year we had 1,800 total cases, of which 1,200 were cases that might have involved a scene where there's someone dead and we could send someone there, but we still don't have anywhere near the resources to send one to the scene every time. So our decision tree, when someone reports a death to us, is go to a scene or not. When do they go? Well, they go to all violent death scenes. If someone's dead at the scene, car crash, suicide, homicide, accident. A lot, again, so many of them are drug deaths. If it's a young person, a relatively young person, found dead with, even though it may not be a violent death, we ask our investigators to go to the scene. Where they don't have to go to the scene is where someone dies in the hospital, or again, someone's quite elderly. No one is raising any concerns. There's always a police officer there, so they're in communication with the police. They don't, they're not required to go to a scene. This does have financial implications because we have to pay them more if they go to a scene and if they take a call on the phone. So there are a number of reasons for this. Anyway, if they do go to a scene, because somebody's there in charge of the body, and that person, usually a police officer, it may be family, medical people, we don't want them waiting an undue amount of time. Our goal is 95% of the time our scene investigation will be conducted within 1 hour of notification. So again, our investigators are all part-time. They're either at work in their day job or they're at home. Once they get a call, we hope to get them out to the scene within an hour. Not always a problem, but we do have some people, for example, that live in southeast part of town, and then if there's something up on Lincoln Lake Road, that can be just about an hour just to drive up there. So we've achieved our goal actually a little bit higher, just over 96% of the time last year. We beat our 95% expectation, so we're doing pretty well in that regard. How much time do I have? Do I carry on? Anybody got any questions?
You can be quick.
This won't be much longer.
That's great.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have questions, so.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay. So our cost per case investigated has actually went up considerably in 2017, largely because we had many more autopsies than we had before, and these are mostly, almost all, due to the opioid epidemic. We'd hoped to spend $1,080 per case, and it was actually $1,360 per case. This year, we're hoping to keep it down to $1,164. Three more things. Our case reports complete within 2 months of death. I thought I just had one similar to that.
Those are just the outputs, those are the counts.
Yeah, okay. Right. Okay, so again, last year we had 1,254 cases. This year we're expecting 1,200. Probably just going to be higher than that. Our accepted medical examiner cases, and I will say very quickly what is accepted, why do we have that? When a death is reported to us, our office either accepts the case as a medical examiner report, which means we will complete the death certificate and do the investigation. Sometimes it turns out that it really doesn't need to be a medical examiner case, and an example might be somebody's at a nursing home or at hospice, and they fall. And these people that run these facilities, to be conservative, they're just told, hey, if anybody falls or might have fallen, then they die a short time later, just call the medical examiner. So that's a lot of our non-accepted cases. What we will do is our people will take the call, find out what the story is. Did the person go rapidly downhill after they fell and die sooner than they were expected to do so, in which case the death is probably related to the fall? Or did they not have any appreciable injuries and they were really doing poorly anyway, and the death is no surprise? Those are cases where we don't think the fall, there's no trauma involved, and we will not accept them as cases. Similarly, the hospitals kind of have a general rule that if anybody dies within 24 hours of admission for any reason, they will report the death to us, and a lot of those are heart attacks or some other medical catastrophe that doesn't have anything to do with us, and we'll say thanks for reporting the death, but we're not going to accept it. So that's why the accepted cases last year was 1,254. That's the ones that were legitimately medical examiner cases. We had another 600 or so that were decline cases, is what we call them, but it still takes, or it can take quite a bit of time to sort through the information that we're given and decide, is that really a case that we have to accept or not? And it may involve calling several physicians. Our investigators may have to be calling several physicians who might have seen the person or examined them, and nurses as well. Finally, a number of autopsies we had anticipated, or kind of every year, of course, it's a guesstimate when we do our budget, how many autopsies we're going to do. Autopsies are the single biggest component of our expenditures. So we have to estimate, well, about how many are we going to do so we can put it in the budget. Well, we anticipated 330 for 2017. We ended up doing 410. And that's why we kind of blew through our budget. And again, most of those were opioid overdoses. This year, we put down 338. I think we'll probably do a little higher than that. We may not do 410 like we did last year, but we're on a pace to do just about as many as we did last year. So hopefully there'll be a few fewer in the remaining months. So, any questions?
Thanks, Dr. Cole. Any questions for Commissioner Coleman?
My question is particularly about the Gift of Life program and that great work there, but does all organ donation, tissue donation like that, does it come through the medical examiner's office, or is there other paths where that happens?
Okay, so the question is, does every organ donation have to be approved by us? The answer is not everyone, but the vast majority. So where most organ and tissue donations come from are people who've been injured in a crash, or sometimes it's a murder case and they're still alive. In fact, we had a hanging victim last week who was found, wasn't quite dead, was kept on life support, and this guy donated heart, lungs, liver, just about everything inside. So at any rate, and of course we had to approve that, and then the tissue donation, if sometimes somebody is dead, but they can still, if they're within 24 hours, they can take corneas, skin and bone for orthopedic procedures and so on. And in a case like that, they would ask us. The few that wouldn't require our approval might be somebody's had a brain hemorrhage, spontaneous, naturally occurring brain hemorrhage. That's not our jurisdiction. Sometimes they ask us anyway because they want to be careful. So most of them do, and we work with them, and overall it helps, of course, the public, and so we're for that. We try to facilitate that, and we did get an award for, I think, being the highest county, or the county that gave the most, helped provide the most donations.
Yep. Thank you. Commissioner Korndike.
Thank you, Chair. So, Doctor, it looks like the number of autopsies is about flat, but you said the opioid deaths are up. So are the other reasons for autopsies down then?
Well, the increase in autopsies is mainly opioid.
Okay.
The other ones are about flat. That is the accidental deaths, non-opioid, because those are opioid overdoses we do rule those accidental almost always.
Right.
But the motor vehicle crashes and the falls and all that sort of thing is about the same. And our homicides, I would say, they're the lowest because we don't have too many, thankfully. But that's stayed about the same, and so have the natural deaths.
So how do our opioid numbers in 2018 compare to 17 at this point?
I don't have the numbers at the tips of my fingers, although
Okay.
that's something we can. It's on the tip of my tongue. That's something we can. I can find out through Carmen, who's our office administrator.
I think we
But my
appreciate-
sense is that they're about the same as last year.
Because I know at the county we're working on that issue hard, so it'd be interesting to see what those numbers were.
Yeah, and our epidemiologist,
Right.
Hartle, Mr. Hartle, is very helpful with that as well. So that's something that we can find out if you like for up-to-date figures.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Dr. Cole? Commissioner Blanc.
Yes, Doctor, I understand that suicides are on the increase. Now, is this because of the opioids? Is there some connection there? And in homicides, I remember years and years ago, if we had one in Grand Rapids, that was a big deal, and it'd make front page of the paper. And today I see, a while back, there was one that happened that was on the back page of the paper and about a paragraph dedicated. Tell me a little bit about that.
Suicides, no, I don't think it's best I can tell, they're not related to the opioid crisis, but, you know, this business of deciding whether a case is an accident or a suicide, or sometimes even a homicide, is somewhat subjective. And Dave Stark, my partner, and I, we're the ones, whoever's in charge of the case, we make that determination. And we do it based on our experience and so on, but it is somewhat subjective. So we have taken the approach, as does pretty much every other medical examiner in the country, to start with the drug overdoses. That the person who overdoses on fentanyl, which is a huge number of cases of that, fentanyl, heroin, or the prescription opioids, whatever, that those are accidental because probably they were using them recreationally. They probably weren't trying to kill themselves. So those are considered accidents. I don't really have a reason. Our suicide deaths are up somewhat, that's true. Why that is, I don't know. There's always going to be some fluctuation, but there's been nothing in particular, other than the odd thing I can say is we're getting a lot more women that are killing themselves. It always used to be 3/4 of them were men. Now it's probably close to half and half, and the reasons are nothing amazing. I mean, a breakup with their spouse or something like that. But, so I would say that the notable thing to me about our suicides is that there's more women that are, unfortunately, that are committing suicide. I'm trying to think if I've answered everything.
Yeah, homicides.
Yeah, homicides. I don't have an up-to-date list of our numbers, but we get two kinds of homicides. That's just my arbitrary distinction. We get the ones in the city, a lot of them inner city. A lot of those are drug-related, and then we get those more out in the country. We had one my partner did one yesterday up on Big Pine Island Lake. Some people were intoxicated and got into a dispute, and about 1:30 in the morning, so we know what that's going to be, alcohol, and the guy got shot. So we have the country ones, which are usually bars and people that, well, I guess basically that, alcohol related. Then we have the inner city ones, which often are more drug related or gang related. But our overall numbers, I think we are up a little this year, but again, that's something I can find out. I just don't have it right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Morning. As I look at performance measures, I typically think of them as a tool as we're going through the budget process now. One of the ways to use that tool is in the budget process, and I really find this to be kind of succinct and kind of in combination with the medical examiner's report that we just received, really helpful in making those kinds of decisions and understanding the work that you do. So thank you for that. I just have a couple of thoughts that would also be helpful in tweaking this as we move forward to next year. One is in the indicator outputs at the very end. We have the percentage of case reports completed within 2 months. Then we have the number of case reports completed within 2 months. I wonder if we could just drop that within 2 months so that we can see the total number of case reports completed. And then you talked about what sounded to me like a significant use of your time, which is the number of cases not accepted. And if we're telling the story of what you do, I think it'd be good to include those numbers as well.
Yes, that's the sort of thing that's in fact, that's where this information came, as the annual report. So we could, like, for this type of presentation next year, just single that out as like total cases.
Right, and put that in the outputs area there.
And yeah, break that down as to accepted and non-accepted.
Yeah. Help give the full
picture. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because our people are really stretched. We've had some difficult times, even though we have 7 people. Some of them get to be gone, and we have minimal expectations out of how many cases they should do, and some of them are already up to their yearly quota for cases, just because it's been so crazy.
Hopefully quick follow-up. I don't know if you remember, but decades ago when I was working at Blodgett and used to see you occasionally there, you often invited me to take a tour of the facility there.
Yep.
And one of the reasons for that is that, there certainly was an issue with capacity, whether it was adequate facility. Could you just comment on where things are with that, whether that's adequate now?
Well, it isn't adequate. It is not adequate. What has happened is that the one improvement that we've had, our current facility, I'll just back up, and the one you saw, I think we took you down in the 90s, early 90s, is the same. It was built in 85. I came in 82. Then in 1985, they moved the morgue and they slightly enlarged it, which was helpful back 3 years ago, I guess. But it's the same facility, and our numbers have gone up, and the complexity of our cases has gone up. I don't want to, again, spend too much time, but basically that's not adequate. What has improved is that the hospital at Blodgett, where, of course, the county has a contract to do the physical autopsy, they did build a couple of coolers, and they added another autopsy room, but really to be used for infectious and dangerous kinds of cases, has its own airflow and stuff. But yeah, we need quite a bit more space, really, to be to do the things that we're expected to do here in the 2000s.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just have one. You mentioned that our county kind of takes on the burden of bringing in folks from other counties due to our level 1 trauma center. Do other states have some sort of reciprocity program or something where those county of origin would take on those costs or reimburse us?
That would be so nice. So the
Would be
question
nice.
is, so does Kent County get anything out of these, what we call out-of-county cases? So Ottawa's one of our bigger customers, of course, but whoever it might be. The answer is no. And that would be if we ever, sooner or later, probably after I'm gone, there'll have to be a decent facility built that's really dedicated for autopsies and not just be in the basement of the hospital. And at that point, that would be the time when I think a structure could be made. Right now, they pay Spectrum, the other counties do.
Okay.
And we've tried, the only county we have much luck is, what we try to do, even though technically they don't have to pay us, but sometimes if another county sends us a case, they're injured there, they make it to usually Butterworth, or Saints, and they're pronounced dead. So really, Kent County has no interest, the county has no interest in the case.
Right.
But yet we're stuck with it by law. Sometimes we can get them, and this started under Dr. Mack, but sometimes we can get them to pay for the autopsy. But if you look at the law, it's the county where the person dies.
Yep.
So if they'll spring for it, great, but it doesn't happen hardly. Most counties, are onto this now, and they'll say,
Yeah.
no, don't even bother.
Could you run the numbers for us at some point, or have someone run the numbers of just, maybe not the total dollar amount, but just how many we're taking in from other counties, just to know?
It's really easy to do. Sorry
Okay,
for interrupting.
yeah,
It's almost a no-brainer, because we would have
Yep.
that. I'm just trying to think how I
Is it
will
like-
get that information to you.
just
If
Wayman.
somebody can- Okay, fine.
Yep.
If you can give me a call, Wayman, that
Sure.
we can give you for the
Just
last
interesting to
several
know.
years.
Yeah, is
It's
it 50%, is
basically-
it 10%, is
It's
it?
around, it's probably around 30%, but we
Okay.
can get specifics.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Cole.
It's a good question, and.
Appreciate
yeah,
that.
to be aware of it.
Thank you so much.
You bet, thanks.
All right, on to item 4, health, creation of one full-time sanitarian position. Wayman?
Yes, this is a request to the board to create one full-time sanitarian position in the Community Wellness Division of the Health Department. City of Grand Rapids has made $185,960 in funding available through its Community Development Department for the Kent County Health Department to be a partner in the the city's Michigan Department of Health and Human Services grant, which is dealing with lead. The objectives of the grant are to remediate lead paint hazards in pre-1978 housing and to reduce elevated blood levels in young children. The primary objective of the Health Department is to assist property owners with the application process, generate community awareness of lead issues, and coordinate blood level testing of children. Secondary objective of the Health Department is to provide elevated blood level investigations, including combined paint inspections and risk assessments, as well as clearance examinations for Medicaid and other federally funded lead hazard control projects throughout Kent County. To accomplish this task, as outlined above, the Health Department is requesting to add one full-time sanitarian position in the Community Wellness Division's lead program with a total cost of salary and benefits of $74,700. The grant funds from the City of Grand Rapids, as well as the cost of sanitarian positions, will be included in the fiscal year 2019 Health Fund budget. The grant period is from October 1, 2018 through September 30th, 2019. If funding is eliminated or decreased, the position will be eliminated unless continuation funding is identified pursuant to the fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
All right. Moved by Commissioner Korndike, seconded by Commissioner Skaggs. Do I have any questions or comments on this issue? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Same sign. All right. Motion passes. On to item 5, Human Resources Labor Agreement, Police Officers Labor Council Captains and Lieutenants.
Yes, this is a request to the board to approve a 5-year labor agreement for the period of January 1, 2019 through December 31, 2023 between the County of Kent and the Police Officers Labor Council Captains Lieutenants. Negotiating Committee recommends approval of a 5-year labor contract with the Police Officers Labor Council Captains Lieutenants, which represents 21 members. Wages will increase 2.5% annually in 2019, 2021, and 2% in 2022 and 23. Either party may reopen the agreement during 2021 for negotiations of 2022 and 2023 wages. The maximum retiree health care stipend will increase to $400. The total 5-year increase to salary and benefits cost is $993,650.
Move that.
Moved by Commissioner Vonk, support by Commissioner Korndike. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Skaggs.
So just a question for Wayman. So what does this mean? Either party may reopen the agreement during 2021.
Amy Rolston
Do they have to come to another agreement, or what's the purpose of a
We have
5-year
Amy
plan?
from HR to answer
Amy
some
Rolston is
questions.
here from.
Good morning. The purpose of that is, what we'd like to do is move from the current cadence where we negotiate every 3 years to a 5-year cadence to improve efficiency, but either side, either the county or the union, has a vested interest as we get to those outlying years to have the ability to renegotiate wages if the economy is going gangbusters, or conversely, if we end up in a recession type situation. If either side wants to come to the table and request that we bargain over those last 2 years, then either side can. If neither side does, then the 2% placeholders that are in there, those stand, and that's what would apply. Is that?
Any other questions on this issue? Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to put this in perspective, if you could, a minute, of all of the contracts. This seems like, is it maybe the last of contracts that were being negotiated, or is this the first of kind of a new set? Could you?
Yeah, good question. We negotiated 3 small agreements last year for, and you'll see an amendment to those contracts, which is the next action request to make the format consistent with what we just negotiated and we're seeking approval for captains and lieutenants. All of the remaining agreements expire at the end of this year, so we're looking at following that same format with the remaining agreements is what you see here.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 6, amendments to labor agreements, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Association, Teamsters 214, and Circuit Court Referee Association. Wayman.
Yes, this is a request to approve amendments to the labor agreements for the Kent County Assistant Prosecutors Attorney Associations, which is 34 employees, Teamsters Local 214 Parks, which is 17 employees, and Circuit Court Referees Associations, which is 8 employees. Negotiating Committee recommends approval of an amendment to each of the above agreements. All 3 amendments change the wage increases from 2019 and 2020 from 2% to 2.5% per year. All 3 amendments increase the $350 maximum monthly retirement retiree health stipend to $400 for employees who retire in 2019 or after. In addition, the Circuit Court Referee Association Amendment extends the agreement terms from 3 years to 5 years, adds 2.2% wage increases for 2021 and 22, and allows either party to reopen the agreement in 2020 for negotiation of 2021 and 22 wage rates. These changes make the Circuit Court Referee Association agreement consistent with the Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Association and Teamsters Local 2014 agreements. The total 5-year increase to salary and benefits cost is $166,000.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Skaggs, support by Commissioner Coleman. Any questions or comments on this? Commissioner Coleman.
I'm just curious about seeing the 2.5% number. Is that purely a negotiated number? Is it Michigan CPI? Like, what's the basis for that?
The last CPI statistic I saw was for July, and that was at about 2.9%. So, yeah, the economy is a big driver of that, which is helping our employees to keep pace.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy.
All right, any other questions? Commissioner Talon.
Well, just a comment. Offhand, I just want to compliment HR on extending these to 5 years. That does seem like a really smart thing to do, and appreciate the thinking in that.
All right. Seeing no other questions or comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 7, Sheriff, add 3 school resource officer positions for Comstock Park, Sparta, and Kent ISD.
Yes, this is a request to add 3 county road patrol officer positions to provide school resource officer services for Comstock Park Public Schools, Sparta area schools, and the Kent Intermediate School District. Appropriate $160,509 to the 2018 Sheriff Special Project Fund budgets for the programs, and to authorize the board chair to approve all applicable agreements. The sheriff is requesting to contract with Comstock Park Schools, Sparta area schools, and the Kent Intermediate School District to provide 1 school resource officer and a vehicle for each school system. This need for additional SROs will be met by adding 3 additional county patrol officers positions at a cost of $128,407 annually per officers, including wage and benefits, vehicle, equipment, and other costs. Comstock Park and Sparta schools will each pay 70% of the wages and benefit costs of the officer, with the sheriff's department paying the remaining 30%. The Kent ISD will pay 100% of the wage and benefits costs. In addition, Sparta and Comstock Park will pay $245 per month toward the cost of the vehicle used by the SRO, and KISD will pay $350 per month. All applicable contracts have been reviewed and approved as to form by corporate counsel. If funding is eliminated or decreased, the positions will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
I have a motion by Commissioner Korndike.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Vonk. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Bolger. Wayman, are these positions, it says that we're adding new ones, but are most of these positions held by or hired by people that we already have that are familiar with the districts, account makeup?
We'll have the sheriff or, yeah,
Or Michelle.
maybe, yeah, there we go.
Sheriff Stelma. Thank you so much for coming up.
Good morning. The question again, sir?
So when it says in the proposal we're adding new positions, but
Yes.
most of these positions are filled with existing deputies that are familiar with the district. Is this kind of a different type of animal?
That is correct. They will be filled with senior officers, and the school districts actually go through a interview process where the school district actually selects the officer that they think will best fit their footprint.
Thank you.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Sheriff, what other school districts do we have this program, the School Resources Officer program, with?
We're currently in 8 different school districts: Kennewa, Kent City, Northview, Cedar Springs, Forest Hills, Lowell, Caledonia, and Byron Center. And even conversations continue with the Kentwood School District and the Rockford School District, but we do not have an agreement with those school districts yet.
And are those agreements with the other school districts, are they also the 70/30 cost sharing?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Commissioner Talon?
Thank you, Chair. Sheriff, just, I'm kind of curious about your thoughts about this. I was at a National Association of Counties conference and went to quite a few community corrections related kinds of sessions. And one national expert talked about how generally law enforcement officers are trained as warriors versus social workers or teachers, which I had never heard that before, but I found that kind of interesting. Do you have a sense of how hard it is to find people who can both do the law enforcement piece, which is a piece of what is described in the description here, in case of a disaster or that kind of thing, versus the kind of social work, teaching that is also part of this position? Is it difficult to find those kinds of officers, or is that not that uncommon?
Well, it is a unique combination of social work and law enforcement work. Our officers are continually trained that they're guardians with a warrior mindset. They're guardians of the public, they're guardians of the community. They provide a service, but yet when an incident calls for it, they need to have the warrior mind and the warrior mentality. We don't necessarily have a difficult time in recruiting officers for these types of positions because of that. And I think our officers have a very specific mindset to serve the community, and many of them love to work with young people. That being said, a great percentage of their work is law enforcement. And just since January of this year, just in 18, during the school year of 18, our officers investigated over 45 serious school violence threat reports. And of those 45, at least 9 of them at last count were credible enough that the prosecutor issued charges on them. So it is a combination of doing schoolwork, but they also have to do law enforcement work.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the sheriff? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes. On to item 8, add 3 road patrol officers for Byron Township.
Yes, this is a request to the board to add 3 county road patrol officer positions to provide enhanced patrol services to Byron Township and appropriate $89,700 to the 2018 Sheriff's Special Project Fund budget for the programs, and to authorize the board chair to approve all applicable agreements. Effective October 1, 2018, the sheriff is requesting to expand the scope of existing agreement with Byron Township to add another 1.5 units of service or 12 hours daily by adding 3 county road control positions and a vehicle. The township will pay the full cost of wages and benefits for each position. The cost of vehicle, uniforms, and equipment is paid by the sheriff. All applicable contracts have been reviewed and approved as to form by corporate counsel. If funding is eliminated or decreased, the positions will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
I have a motion.
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Vonk, support by Commissioner Coleman. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Skaggs.
So it's going to continue to be my position that that road patrols be paid for by the taxpayers in the area that are being served. Since this is a non-mandated service, I think it's inappropriate to ask taxpayers in cities that I represent, like Grand Rapids and East Grand Rapids, to subsidize this service when we're not subsidizing this service in our cities. So that being said, although I appreciate that we have an agreement here with Byron Center, it doesn't appear to be for the full cost of the services that are provided, since we're paying for the vehicle and the equipment, which is expensive. So I will be voting no and encouraging the sheriff to make sure that we get a full cost accounting and a full cost payback on these positions.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Vonk.
Yes, the build-out for the southern tier of townships, Byron being one of them, how does that compare to Plainfield Township? I think Plainfield Township with 30,000. What's the weighted officer for that area versus Plainfield, just for me to give me an idea? I know Plainfield, we added a couple officers maybe 3-4 years ago.
Right, so the current contract level for Plainfield for Plainfield Township specifically is they have 24-hour coverage with at least one car, but 16 hours a day they have 2-car coverage. And that's very comparable to what's going on now with this contract in Byron. Byron would have 24 hours with one car and 12 hours with a second car. Byron is the third busiest hotspot in the whole county in terms of calls for service at a single location. That's specifically Tanger Outlet Mall, which is really what's pushing a lot of the resource needs in Byron right now. And this contract gets us coverage during the hours that are going to be primarily at risk in Byron because of the Tanger Outlet. And so then it's allowing us to have the resources to do patrol, which is not a mandated service, patrol preventative work, but it also helps us to do responses, which are the county mandated work to do, responses to calls for service in that area.
Okay, who's that number 2? Because they'll probably be coming in here soon too.
Well, it kind of depends. I think Walmart on Alpine is a big hotspot. Yeah, okay. Meyer in Plainfield is always a big hotspot. Okay. Typically our commerce-centric areas because it pulls a lot of traffic in. And keep in mind that can be criminal offenses, but it can also be just people offenses like traffic and accidents and things like that as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Welcome, Undersheriff. To the comments prior. So, yes, the county is paying some money into this, but it's my understanding that there is a benefit to the county that if there's an emergency where we need more coverage, these officers can be pulled to assist in other parts of the county. Is that correct?
Correct, and that's a really important thing to keep in mind. We do have a requirement to respond for calls for service. And without our partners, which are all the townships, and this is one big pool of officers that are placed and used in concert with each other, without those partnerships, we would not have the resources to respond to calls for service within Kent County at an adequate level. And even with these partners, our responses are, in some areas of our community, quite long, which can cause a pretty significant safety issue. You're going to hear us talk about our priority 1 and 2 responses in the next month when we're talking about our performance measures, and there are serious lags at multiple times a day where we're not able to get to a location soon enough. So again, these partnerships allow us to have additional resources in the community. You always hear me talk about surge capacity. Really, really important for us to have resources in the community ready to go when there's a priority 1 or 2 response necessary anywhere. And that is built into our contracts. And it's communicated pretty effectively with our townships too, that that's our resource, this is a partnership, and we're able to use that resource someplace else if we need to.
And then it would also be true that a lot of these areas that ask for more requests have something there that all residents of Kent County use, and it's also not just provide law enforcement safety to Byron Center,
Absolutely.
but to everyone that's coming and visiting that feature that's drawing people.
And that's a really important thing to remember, that resources are not stagnant to one community. So not only can they respond outside of that community if necessary, and that happens daily, but as our citizens in Kent County travel through these different jurisdictions, even something as simple on the expressway can cause resources to be needed. But an asset like Tanger Outlet Mall is people from all over our community and other communities come to that location every single day and spend a lot of money for our communities, and there are substantial benefits.
All right. Commissioner Skaggs?
Just following up on that, I'm sure there are people from Byron Center right now in Grand Rapids and East Grand Rapids.
Noted. Any other question? Commissioner Coleman?
I would just like to comment that I'm relieved to hear that the increase in need is for the outlets and not my unruly children.
Well, I was going to talk to you about that privately.
All right. Any other questions for Under Sheriff Young? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to item 9 on our agenda, request to incorporate additional positions beginning October 1. Wayne.
Yes, this is a request to the board to add 3 corrections officers to meet state mandated indigent defense standards. 1 county patrol officer and 1 caseworker, 1 assigned to the front of the court, 20 youth specialists and 1 cook staff for the expanded juvenile detention facility, and convert 1 part-time continuing quality improvement specialist to full-time at the Kent County Community Action Agency. The sheriff is requesting 3 full-time correction officers to ensure compliance with state indigent defense standards under Public Act 93 of 2013. The estimated cost of the position is $442,000 and is included in the approved indigent defense plan funded by the state. The front of the court is requesting a caseworker at a cost of $82,114, and the sheriff is requesting a 3rd full-time county patrol officer and vehicle at a cost of $179,000 to help resolve outstanding warrants. The estimated cost of these positions, including necessary equipment, will be funded by the Title 4D grant and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services medical incentive payments. Juvenile detention is requesting 20 youth specialists and 1 cook staff for the expanded facility. The annualized cost estimated at $1,334,200 for the positions will be funded by the state at 50% and the county general fund at 50%. Because 2019 will be a partial year, the estimated first-year total cost for these positions will be $659,650. The addition of these positions and the expanded facility will allow more children to be placed in the county facility with enhanced programming rather than being placed in an out-county facility, resulting in significant cost savings. Kent County Community Action is requesting to convert its part-time continuous quality improvement specialist position to full-time status to improve the department's ability to ensure optimal utilization of available grant funds and to submit grant applications. The estimated cost to convert this position to full-time status is $37,355. Will be covered by Community Services Block Grant and Housing Choice Voucher funds. If funding is eliminated or decreased, the positions will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to the fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Moved by Commissioner Vaughn, support by Commissioner Ponstein. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Korndike.
Thank you, Chair. So $1.4 million, we're comfortable with that, and financial projections are that we're going to increase revenues enough to more than cover that?
Yes.
Okay. Then on the biggest part of this is a juvenile detention, requesting 20 youth specialists. Can we get a quick overview on what that entails? And what
Bring
that's
up
gonna
Andy.
provide?
Andy Thalhammer from the Circuit Court is here. Stacy McGinnis is also here from Juvenile Detention, Superintendent.
If you're looking for any more details, I'll call Stacy up here.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically, we're increasing the size of the capacity of the detention facility by about 42%. Licensing standards require, obviously appropriate staffing to do so. We will, in large part, utilize again, I throw the 17-year-old age of majority issue out there because that will change a lot of things as far as what our capacity is to do more residential treatment or treatment services within our county so that probation officers can stay involved, family members can stay involved, et cetera. So those additional beds, we're hopefully going to be able to utilize 24 of them, provide those services, and kind of shift the costs from our placement line item to our detention line item. So we're hoping to remain pretty cost neutral with this increase.
And better results, hopefully.
Hopefully better result. Research everywhere says if you can treat kids in their community, when it's safe to do so, if you can treat them in their community and keep those natural supports involved, you're gonna achieve better outcomes, lower recidivism, et cetera. Right now, we're sending kids, 2 hours away. A lot of families don't have the transportation to get there. I mean, our POs work to get them there, et cetera, but they'll be right here. We have a contract with someone who does family work for parents that are involved in our programming in the facility. We've heard great reviews of that. So, yeah, we really are anticipating a better overall system.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Andy? Commissioner Talon?
Thank you, Chair. Questions on other things too, but since Andy's up there, where does the public or commissioners see data like was just discussed? Things like outcomes, rates of recidivism, success of diversion for the juvenile programs. I know some of that is out there for other court.
Yeah, and pretty much all these kids are included in our community probation program. Pretty much every youth, which is by and large where we point to those recidivism rates for performance measures. As far as kids that go into different residential treatment programs, it's very difficult to get that recidivism data. We're attempting to do so, to do a better job at it, because, again, usually when kids go into placement, they're almost 18 or almost 17 years old or 17, so if they commit a new crime, it's a different system. They're in the adult system, and we don't always have access to that information. It is something, I've actually got a meeting on Friday with a research person to kind of dig more into that to see, which placements are more effective, et cetera.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Andy? I just have one on the 20 youth specialists. Does any of that cover mental health or substance use disorder assistance at all?
As far as our youth specialists by themselves, not necessarily, and Stacy can maybe help with that. We do have contracts with Corizon. We do have Network 180 actually staffed in the facility to deal with that type of thing. Substance abuse is one of the issues we really want to target with new residential programming. That's something that a lot of probation officers have brought up as they see a need as well. So we definitely recognize the need. These 20 youth specialists probably won't be providing that type of therapeutic intervention, but we just need them to be there.
Okay. All right. All right. Seeing no more questions, all in favor, say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Commissioner Taylor.
Yeah, I thought we were just talking about this piece, but there's about 10 different things we're approving.
Pardon me.
I wondered if we could get some sort of summary of the state indigent defense situation, where we're at in that, how it's changing, and why we need these?
Sure. I can give you a quick snapshot, either Matthew or Linda, one of the two. Matthew, you want to come up and give a quick snapshot, let everybody know where we're standing with that?
So Linda and I and Craig Paul are kind of tag teaming this now. The State Indigent Defense Plan has been approved by our state for us to implement in this upcoming fiscal year. It includes these correctional officers to help make sure that those that are incarcerated at the jail are able to get to meet their attorneys and do the teleconferencing and things like that. So we're working with that. We're also going to be working with our local district courts now and the circuit court to roll out the plan. We haven't seen the final contract from the state of Michigan yet, but what we hear is that they anticipate providing funding in October, and then we would have 6 months after that to be operational. So it's starting to happen. The process is moving forward, and partners in the sheriff and the courts.
If I could just follow up, one of the issues, as I understood it, was a dispute over some administrative costs that we were claiming. How did we end up in that?
So across the whole state, the Indigent Defense Commission did not approve cost allocation. We were able in our plan to get approval or agreement with the Indigent Defense that they were going to be reviewing that this whole year for the whole state, and us as a part of that. We're also pursuing, are there other options to help us cover costs that might be more programmatic in different ways in the future. So we're working on it, and it's something that's on our list to follow up with Indigent Defense Commission in the upcoming.
Any other questions? Any other questions or comments on this motion? All right, seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 10, request to incorporate additional positions in the 19 budget. Wayman.
Yes, this is a request to the board to add 1 contract compliance specialist and 2 financial analyst positions in fiscal services and 1 school resource officer sergeant and 1 emergency communications officer at the sheriff department. Fiscal services is requesting to add a full-time contract compliance specialist in purchasing, which will provide expertise to negotiate and evaluate vendor contract terms, maintenance agreements, and purchase terms and conditions. This is also allow the purchasing department to manage its contracts in a timely manner along with the demand for additional services while freeing capacity for the corporate counsel's office staff to focus on larger policy issues, liability, and prevention. The estimated cost for the position is $90,899. Fiscal Services is also requesting 2 full-time financial analysts due to the increased complexity and volume of the financial reporting requirements in county maintenance and needs in the department. These additions will be alleviated. These positions will alleviate the workload for other departments, which has routinely exceeded 60-hour-a-week work weeks over an extended period of time. The estimated cost for these positions is $157,689 and will be partially offset by the reduction in use of contract positions in the department. The sheriff is requesting full-time sergeant position for supervision of 11 school resource officers. The cost of the wages and benefits for the vehicle and equipment for this position is $137,653. The sheriff is also requesting to add 1 full-time emergency communication operator to offset the increased workload resulting from a 2017 agreement to assume dispatch services for animal control using existing emergency communication staff. The position will be funded by the Animal Shelter General Fund at $58,777 and other agencies that utilize dispatch services. In the event funding is eliminated or decreased, the position will be eliminated unless continuation funding is approved pursuant to the fiscal policy on grants, contracts, and donations.
Any questions or comments on this motion? Commissioner Bach?
Yes, on the fiscal services part, at one time before the airport became an authority, they purchased a lot of information from us, fiscal services and so forth. Over 300,000, I believe, was the number. And that was never decreased when we became an authority, the airport became an authority. How does that fit into the piece of pie and what portion of that was going to fiscal services, and just sort of explanation of what happened as a result of that transition? And
perhaps Marvin Van Nortwick or Steve Duarte could talk about that. Maybe you want to repeat the question just so that Steve's got it.
Good morning, Commissioner. I'm sorry, I missed your question. What's the question?
The question is, before the airport became an authority, they bought $300,000 plus, maybe up to $500,000 of client services from the county for fiscal services and other things that they purchased. And no reduction was made, to my knowledge, after they became an authority. And I just wondered what happened to that piece of pie and how that transitioned into the fiscal services.
Well, I'm not quite sure how to answer your question. If you're talking, they bought some specific services from IT, and that was paid, and those costs have went away. The rest of the costs they paid were part of the cost allocation plan, which ties back to the audit report, and the whole pie is spread to the county based on allocation statistics. Part of that still remains, some of those costs still remain, so there's the remaining parties pay a larger piece of that particular pie for the remaining cost. Does that answer your question, sir?
It seems like there'd be some, additional value left at the county as a result of that transition, where those people are still employed and they probably should not be employed possibly as the airport increased its employment. I just wondered, what happened to those funds, and is everybody All those funds are being managed to the fullest extent, let's put that.
I guess the question is, when you spread central support costs, unless you reduce the number of employees,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
or cut some other costs within central support, then you still have the same amount of employees, the same amount of employee cost. But you got to remember, we expanded a lot of programs. We brought over CAA, who has a number of grants. I probably have one full-time person allocated just taking care of CAA costs. Today, we added we expanded some more programs. We've got a lot of things going on, so we haven't been able to reduce staff because of
Okay,
it.
well, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
how those funds are being
it
used.
continues to grow. The complexity of the audit, the timing of things, we're on strict time frames, okay? I can't say to the state of June 30th, I didn't have time to get the audit done. So I get the audit done. If that means you have to give up your vacation, if that means you have to work overtime, that's what we do. When I get ready to go to New York, I've got to have a report to present to the rating agency. I can't come in and say, we spend a little, we took in a little, we got a little left. I got to come in with a nice report. That means we've got to get that data ready. It's a very short time frame. Again, if you can't get on vacation, that's just the way it is working in that department. I just have one employee went on vacation, told me first year in 4 years that they were able to take a vacation and not take their laptop with them so that they could stay connected and continue to work on the programs. I lost a deputy director of finance who for 4 years was in here at 6 o'clock in the morning, had a 10-month stretch where she worked over 80 hours a week. I think that was one of the factors that led to her retirement at 55. I don't think she wanted to face those hours anymore. We're having unreasonable overtime expectations. We're asking people not to take vacation. So the airport going away didn't improve that a whole lot.
Steve, I respect your answer, and rather than not knowing, I give you credit for it, and that gives us some information as well as we vote and support that. So thank you.
Commissioner Kallman.
Thank you, Chair. So I was under the impression, and I get some of these demands increasing as the county grows and the complexity grows. I was under the impression that some of the overtime, of which I think we all greatly appreciate all the extra effort that's gone in, but that a large portion of that was due to the transition to the CGI software. Are we certain that this this need is for these 2 additional financial analysts is a permanent need relative to the ongoing increase in activity and not relative to the CGI transition?
CGI probably has access to more data. It's a very complex system. It added to our workload, not reduced it, to be honest with you, in my operation. But I see this as a permanent growth of the demand for the departments we serve. I've even had other department heads say, Steve, you need to add to staff because we're having trouble providing the level of service that you're used to.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Talon.
Thank you, Chair. I continue to, I appreciate the comments about what's going on in fiscal services, and I continue to wonder about and wish I had data about kind of what Commissioner Vonk was talking about, the airport being one piece of it. And because I go back so far, I keep thinking about the things that we've shed as a county from the need to provide central services for, starting with Kent Community Hospital, then the Kent District Library, then Community Mental Health and Network 180, and then the zoo, and then the airport. So we've shed a lot of departments, and it feels to me like our central administration costs either have continued to be the same or gone up. I don't know that, but I wish we could get some kind of something that would show us what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I can feel better about that.
Yeah. One of the things, too, that you may remember back in 2009, before the Great Recession, after the recession, we had to shed a number of employees around the county, including fiscal services, HR, and we've held the line for so long. So part of the problem is the fact that we didn't have the ability to accommodate the upswing in activity and programs that we had to service under that period of time. We told departments, you will not add positions. In fact, any time a position was being requested, there was a committee at one point, the Personnel Review Committee, that looked at every position, and if in fact there wasn't a need that they could prove, we told them no. So there's been a pent-up demand for many years in several of these departments. So we can provide you that detail, what the numbers were pre-2009, where the positions are today. We are consciously attempting to reduce the costs related to personnel. We, at least in the administrator's office in particular, have decided to go a different route in terms of how we're structured. For instance, we're not replacing the assistant administrator position. We're identifying other ways to provide you the information that you need, the analysis that we need. Every department's doing the same thing because we know eventually what will happen is we'll be 2009 all over again. So even though we're seeing an uptick in the revenue stream from property taxes, we know that we are the last on the rung to see the benefit of an upswing in the economy. So a lot of that is occurring simultaneously to the complexity, which is what Steve is talking about. I'm of the mindset we don't want to ever have HUD, state of Michigan, anyone poking their nose under our business attempting to say that we didn't follow protocols and regulations and so forth, and we get stung and get hit. So those are the things that Steve is, and I've told Steve in particular to make sure he does. So A360 definitely has made it more onerous for us, and the switch out of that system. And we're still learning from it. The best laid plans don't always work as you would hope that they would work out. But we're adjusting. This is an adjustment to that situation partly. But Steve talks about the overtime. That wasn't just because of A360. That's been because we've said to departments, you need to hold the line. You can't add positions. It's zero-based budget. You can't add positions unless we absolutely have the revenue streams to support it, and it supports the priorities of the board. That's where we've been for the past, since my tenure here.
I'd like to make one more comment to put things in perspective for me. In 2008, I had 41 positions in my department. After adding 2 positions in 2017, I'll have 34. I'm 7 down. That was because of automation and things we've done. But as things have, I think the last time we requested a position was right around the turn of the century. Things have just grown. It's just grown.
That's great. Which one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Talon.
Sure, just an observation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like, we added earlier three officers for the schools, and now, and we said those were being paid for the schools, but we also are now approving an additional supervisory person.
Yes.
That general fund will be paying
Sure.
for. So not all of those costs are being
Sure.
provided by the schools.
Right. And what I provided for you is a memo. I hope you had a chance to read it. What I attempted to do was give you an understanding of what the net is on total costs related to the general fund versus outside sources. If you look at the numbers, the bottom line is that we're spending a total of $2.6 million. The annualized non-general fund costs are $1.4 million, and the annualized net general fund costs are $1.1 million. So at the end of the day, we're paying less out of the general fund versus what we're getting from grants and from the townships and other places to offset these expenses.
So good leverage.
Yes.
All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I do need to grab a motion in a second.
I'll move it.
Moved by Commissioner Vonk, support by Commissioner Kallman. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. On to item 11, miscellaneous. Commissioner Vonk.
I'll say it again, it's nice to hear what Steve had to say this morning. Getting to the nitty-gritty, I always say we operate as commissioners at 35,000 feet. Sometimes it's nice to hear what is going on, what the needs are of the medical examiner with his facility, as you brought up, Commissioner. And it's good to hear that. I don't want to get into day-to-day operations here, and Wayman can handle that with staff, but it's good to hear it from time to time.
Absolutely,
and
it is.
I appreciate it, and
Yeah.
when they got a strong answer like that, I also appreciate it as well.
Right,
So,
right.
thank you.
Any other commissioner? Commissioner Ponstein?
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Time to time, we hear from Stacy on what's going on at the state. I know we've hired people to lobby for us at the federal level. Is there opportunities where it doesn't have to be as often as Stacy because
You mean
of
Becky?
the federal
You
government?
mean Becky? Becky,
Becky.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
Would you like to have an update related to the federal lobbying efforts? That would, sure, we can make that happen. In fact, it's part of his agreement that he would, from time to time, come back and make a report out here. So we can work
Good
with
idea.
Steve, Kerry, getting Ben in front of you guys.
Any other commissioner miscellaneous? Commissioner Talon?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick thought. Hadn't thought through this real well prior to this, but I wonder if we could think about whether it makes sense, given some of the conversations we're having about immigration policy from here on up to the federal government, take a look at whether we want to add something to our legislative priorities regarding that. It might be helpful to, to our role, and finding a way to talk about that and
Yeah.
see whether that's something we could add, just a
Good
suggestion.
idea. Good idea. Any other miscellaneous today? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
B minus.
Good, Chair.
That was a